Okay, next up, we're going to hear another zinc story. We're going to hear from Group 11 Resources and their projects in Ireland. And to tell you about it, the CEO, Bart Jaworski. Bart.
Is there this pointer? All right, so good morning, everybody. So Group 11 just listed on the Vancouver Stock Exchange, so that's why perhaps you may have not heard of us. We're fresh out of the gates as a public company, and we're focused on advanced stage zinc exploration in Ireland. You may ask, why Ireland? A lot of people don't know this, but Ireland is actually one of the largest zinc producers in Europe and hosts some of the largest zinc deposits in the world. Navan being the biggest, 100 million tons at 10%. Glencore's Palace Green deposit, 44 million tons on the books at 8%. So some real big giant deposits in Ireland, and a history of mining there spans about 60 years. Our vision really is to discover Ireland's next big zinc deposit. What makes us different, and how do we get there? That's the big question. We have a two-pronged approach, really big picture and near-term catalysts. We have the largest land position. I think that's one of the main things. We have a huge land position in the country, 3,200 square kilometers. We have additionally an excellent team put together, honed for that very task of big picture thinking and putting it all together, thinking outside the box. And this is where Peter McGaw, Dan McInnes from Mag Silver really come in. John Barry, David Furlong from Rathdowney, some world-class consultants that we've assembled. Mark Holdstock, who's just coming on as our project manager. So very good team altogether. And on top of that, we have the near-term catalysts. We're currently drilling. We've just put out a resource estimate at Stone Park, which is very high grade, 11.2%, which I'll tell you about in a second. Mag Silver came in about a year and a half ago to back us, became our strategic shareholder. They currently own 16%. And Teck is also a shareholder, so it's quite a good register to have. On top of that, we have about 12 institutions that make up 10% of the pie. So, for example, Sprott and US Global probably being the most prominent out of this list of 12, making up 10% of the pie. Market cap-wise, we are at $10 million. We've raised historically 12, so we're actually trading below the amount of money we've actually raised. So, quite shocking in my opinion, my humble opinion. If you include Mag, Teck, and the insiders, we are aligned with the shareholders. We've bought all our shares as well, and that makes up about half the pie. The remainder is high net worth individuals. So we have a pretty good float. Here's where we are in the country. The red dots are our properties. So we have Ballinallack, Silver Mines, Stone Park, and Tralee. We're on the main mineralizing trends. We're right beside existing deposits. For example, at Ballinallack, we are 50 kilometers away from Navan. And Navan is the 100 million ton deposit over here. We have a Navan-style target at Ballinallack. At Stone Park, we are right beside Glencore's Palace Green deposit. I'll show you that in a second. The other thing to mention about Ireland is that this is MVT country, Mississippi Valley type deposits, which are the gold standard. If you're going to be a zinc producer, your best type of zinc deposit would be an MVT. That's because it's coarse grained, it's geometrically simple, easy to process. So some deposits like SEDEX tend to have sliming issues. VMS deposits tend to have a lot of penalty metals. You don't have that. These are nice, clean deposits. Ireland also ranks #1 in terms of policy perception index out of the Fraser Institute, which is also quite interesting. So the above ground dynamics are very good. Quickly about the team, Dan McInnes is our chairman. He's the retired CEO of Mag Silver. He spent 5 years in Ireland back in the 70s with Noranda, so he really knows what he's talking about. I'm CEO of the company and founder. I was a geologist and mining equity analyst, 20 years experience in the industry with Raymond James in Vancouver and then with Davy in Dublin. Brendan Cahill and Alessandro Batelli are also directors. The day-to-day is myself, John Barry, and David Furlong. We're the founders of the company. John and David were ex-Rathdowney, so again, some good experience there. And Peter McGaw is a technical advisor, just to mention. So getting to the heart of the matter, Ballinalack. So Ballinalack, just to show you some high-grade core that we're getting historically from the project, some really good intersections here. And we have a Chinese angle. So we have a joint venture partner here called Non-Femet, just across the water here in Shenzhen, who owns 40% of this project. They paid $6 million for this project back in 2009. And essentially, also to mention, we have a very large historic resource in Ballinalack, 7.7 million tons at 7.3%. That's important because in Ireland, you only need 10 and 10 to be baseline economic. You know, that's because there's so much infrastructure, roads, power. 10 million tons at 10% will get you there. And there's two recent examples of that, Tina, Galmoy deposits in that range. So we're very close to that economic threshold as it is, and we have a lot of exploration upside on top of that, which I'll tell you about in a second. A feasibility was actually written on this project back in 1991, going into a weak metal price environment. So the project, the deposit sits right in the center of our property. If you zoom in on the project or the deposit itself, 3 main pods of mineralization, as so. There's some really stellar grades here, 45 meters of 16 right here. There's other, 20 meters of 10 and 10 meters of 10, 30 meters of roughly 10% up here. So case being made that there's a lot of really juicy and thick intersections through this deposit. Interestingly, as part of the 1991 feasibility study, only the main pod was incorporated into the feasibility study. There was a open pit contemplated here and then a decline down here because of a lack of drilling connecting the pods. So only 4.5 million tons was actually contemplated. So we think we have low-hanging fruit here to add tonnage. Up here, there's a 200-meter step out of 17% over 1.5 meters up here that we can easily look into. So there's additional tonnage there as well. There's backbleed mineralization on the other side of the fault in the red, 10 to 20% grades over 1 meter, 1.5 meters, and we don't know how far out it goes. So that's another area that we're going to be exploring. And then on top of that, we have 380 grams, up to 380 grams silver in this deposit. Silver was never looked at systematically by the old operators, so that's something else what could be a huge potential sweetener for us. On top of the barite, there's up to 85% barite here. So all work that we're going to be doing. But that's all secondary to the main target at Ballinalack, and that's what lies beneath the known deposit. Because this is a cross-section, we are blessed here that we're very close still to Navan, and Navan is the 100 million ton deposit, 50 kilometers away, and it's hosted within the pale beds. Now, because we're so close to Navan, the pale beds are still very well developed here, and the historic work never tested underneath the main deposit into the Navan beds that have this huge analog 50 kilometers away, and this is what we're focused on drilling right now. So stay tuned for that. We should have our first news release on the drilling as a public company in the next few weeks. Very quickly on Stone Park then, you can see some of the grades that we're getting from historic drilling, about 56% zinc and lead, so also very impressive. Here we have a joint venture partner called Connemara, 23%. We own the remainder. I'll skip over the next part here. We're situated in the center of the property here, of the region. This is called the Limerick Basin. This is our ground here. Teck made these discoveries in 2007 to 2009, and we're right next door to Glencore's Palace Green deposit, 44 million tons at 8%. Now, we just put out a resource estimate last week on this area here, 5 million tons at 11.2%, which means we're 30% higher grade than Palace Green, and we're actually much shallower, 200 meters deep versus 300 to 1,300 meters at Palace Green. So we're very well positioned strategically in this camp and in Ireland. Now, the key thing to know about this camp is that it is a brand new camp, number one. Number two, it's already the most significant camp in Ireland outside of Navan. This area already has about 50 million tons to it, and the alteration and the system here is much, much bigger than anything else you see in Ireland. So this is a very significant camp, and the main mineralizing structure has not yet been found, which means once we find that structure with further focused exploration, we have potential to double or triple the existing resources in this camp, which will make this a really, really compelling target area. So that's to be borne out with further drilling, exploration, etc. This is the resource that we just put out, 5 million tons at 11%. So in terms of the 10 and 10, we're a good way there, and much higher on the grade than we need to be, which is fantastic. And I'll just leave you with this slide here, basically showing you how close we are to Palisgreen. So this is the Palisgreen system here. Yeah, almost off here. So that's 44 million tons at 8%, and we're right next door with 5 million tons at 11.2%, much shallower and 30% higher grade. And the mineability of Stone Park is very simple, a nice pancake to mine only 200 meters deep. So I'm out of time. I'll leave it there, and thanks very much.